Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and a very warm welcome to this second talk on the third IIIrd Karmapa's Mahamudra Prayer. The first talk was a general introduction, and today we move into the 25 verses of the prayer. Let's start with the title. The title is a very simple one by Tibetan standards. It's the Mahamudra Prayer of the definitive meaning, or simply the Mahamudra Prayer, the definitive meaning. What is the definitive meaning? Well, Buddha's teaching falls into two categories. One of them is called expedient teachings. So just like one would need to talk to a French person in French and talk to a child in a language a child understands, or a scientist in scientific terms and so on, the expedient teachings are those which are geared to the various minds and aspirations and understandings of people. Expedient or conventional, inasmuch as truths are expressed within the conventions that make sense to those minds. Of course, if you talk to somebody in a way which makes no sense to them, it's useless. So the expedient teachings take one from A to B to C. Some suit these type of people, some suit those type of people. And even when you get the teachings which suit a certain type, there's those for beginners, and then as they go further along the path, what they need at that time, what they need to leave behind them in terms of primitive understanding, and what they need to move into in terms of the next step of awakening. So none of those teachings are set in stone and definitive absolute truths. They are expedient teachings, and that covers most of the Buddha's 45 years of teachings, which fill 45 years of teachings which take up more than 100 volumes. As opposed to these expedient teachings, then there are the definitive meaning teachings, definitive meaning, absolute truth, something that never varies. It will always be true. And it's the ultimate truth inasmuch as at the end, ultima, the end, in the end, it's what it's all about. And in terms of Vajrayana teachings, then this means the changeless nature, the timeless nature of reality. So Mahamudra is about the definitive meaning, as opposed to the expedient meaning. And this is the Mahamudra Prayer. So we have a Sanskrit word, Mahamudra. Two words, in fact. Maha means great, and mudra means seal or stamp in this case. A seal of authenticity. And we can understand this in a couple of ways. When we come later on in this prayer to one section, we'll find that Mahamudra is presented, and it's very, very important, in terms of the ground and the path and the fruition, the end result. The ground, the basis, is about the mind, which is intrinsically pure, so perfect, perfect love, perfect wisdom, perfect peace, perfect purity, perfect happiness or bliss. That is the basic nature of mind. Unfortunately, We don't recognize it, but that's what it is. That is the true nature of mind. So that is the basis we're working on. And then we have a path, which is the work we do. And then at the end, it's still that same basic nature, but now, at the end, it's recognized. And at the complete end, enlightenment, Buddhahood, 100% perfectly realized. So then this great seal of authenticity, if we look at the basis, or if we look at the end result, it is that every single thing, whether it be what appears to us in the apparent universe, out there, things, other people, or whether it be in our own mind, consciousness, awareness, thoughts, feelings, meditation, profound spiritual experience, every single thing, without any exception, is stamped with this truth. What truth? Well, I wish I could tell you, and I'm going to try and tell you, because this Mahamudra prayer is about that. These 25 verses are about what it is, what that truth is. It's called it, it's called that, because no words can really describe, but we'll do our best. So Mahamudra means everything carries this truth in terms of the basis and the end result. Now there's another way we can understand Mahamudra, which is in terms of the path we practice. And it means because everything carries that basic true nature, then anything, any circumstance, any reality within us or around us could be a way to become enlightened, if we knew how. And the Taisutapa gives us an excellent example. He picks up a glass of water and he says you can probably understand or imagine that if one knew how, simply drinking a glass of water could be a way to be enlightened. So even though we can imagine that or accept it, all over the planet people are drinking water but they're not getting enlightened. So the water's there, but they don't know how. We don't know how. So anything could be the way, but we don't know how. We need to learn how. And that is where the presence of an enlightened teacher in our lives is vital for Mahamudra. So when we go into the verses, then there are 25 verses. The first one is an introduction, preparing the ground. Then there are 23 verses that are structured in about 5 main parts, really about Mahamudra, and then a final verse, which is a conclusion and a dedication. So a good beginning, a good main part, which is most of the prayer, and good and excellent conclusion. The first verse, well, let me read it to you. The prayer starts, Namo Guru. Gurus, Yidams, deities of the mandalas, all of the victors and their offspring in the 10 directions and the 3 times, please think of me with your compassionate love and grant your blessing that my wishing prayers come true. This particular verse, and indeed in many ways the practice of Mahamudra, is all about connections. You know we are all interconnected, and our present IIIrd Karmapa talks a lot about our interconnectedness. And so in this first verse, it is about starting in the right place by connecting up to the right source. All of Mahamudra is based on transmission from the Guru. So the text starts, Namo Guru, 2 Sanskrit words. Namo means homage or praise, devotion, and Guru means Guru, so homage, praise to the Guru. It's been kept in Sanskrit by the 3rd Karmapa, who wrote the rest of it in Tibetan, of course, out of homage to the Indian language, Sanskrit, and the Indian masters from whom the Mahamudra comes. After that, the prayer makes reference to the gurus and the yidams and the deities of the mandalas and so on. So let's start with the gurus with whom we want to connect through prayer. Even though we're now in the 21st century, we want to connect beyond time and space to the blessing of the early gurus of our lineage. And we have 2 early lines of transmission coming from India and brought to Tibet by Mapa, the translator. One is called a more distant or a longer transmission, and the other is called the shorter, closer transmission. The longer transmission traces back lineages for the various practices, especially those of the 6 yogas, through Tilopa, and he had more than 100 amazing teachers from whom he learned their special practices. So depending which practice it was, then we trace back from the 1st Karmapa to Gampopa, to Milarepa, to Mapa, then to Naropa, to Tilopa, and then from Tilopa it branches back through time to the various teachers from whom he received the Tumo, the Chandali, the inner heat, the dream yoga, the illusory body, the Bardo teachings, and so on, and so on. Through those unbroken lineages of transmission down through the Karmapas to the present day, then we have a line of connection, like the old-fashioned phone lines where one copper wire plugs into another, and in the end you have an unbroken copper connection from the UK to Australia. Like that, through time, if the lineage is pure and intact, we have an unbroken mind connection all the way back to those early masters. And when your practice of Mahamudra will be good enough, you'll feel it. It will be an amazing resource for you. So there are those distant lineages for the 6 yogas, and also a more distant lineage for remember in the last teaching we had the path of skillful means, the 6 yogas, tap-lam, and then the path of liberation, the direct teachings on mind. And so like that, through Naropa, through Maitripa, going back to Saraha, and going back all the way to Buddha, we have the human lineage. When we say going back to Buddha, we don't mean going back 2,500 years to Buddha Shakyamuni. Today we won't go into this, but we should know that when we say going back to Buddha, we mean going back to the Sambhogakaya of the Buddha, which is present right now and which will be present all the way through the time the Buddha's teaching endures on our planet. It's there all the time. So from that absolute purity expressing itself in form, which is what the Sambhogakaya is, then either we go back to the earliest masters of these transmissions, they interfaced with that total purity and received these teachings. Saraha, Tilopa, and so on. So in the case of the short lineage, we go to Tilopa. Now, he was an Indian teacher. If you've been to India, or even with Tibetans, of course, you'll know how much they venerate their gurus. Sometimes when they just even mention the name of their gurus, they can't help but put their hands together, or tears come to their eyes. The devotion is quite amazing. So Tilopa had more than 100 fabulous gurus. Yet, perhaps the most famous saying from Tilopa is Tilo ngala mi lama me, which means I, Tilopa, have no human guru. Nge lama doji changchenyin, my guru is Buddha Vajradhara. At first, this might seem very disrespectful and ungrateful to all those magnificent teachers he had. But he is saying it because thanks to all those teachers, his mind became enlightened and in direct contact with the Sambhogakaya of the Buddha, directly plugged into Mahamudra, enlightenment, the timeless, changeless truth that's everywhere. And from that place of purity, he could teach, and he needed to make that clear. He wasn't just handing down something that he'd received from his teacher. He was handing down teachings from the isness that he was. So from him to Naropa, to Mapa, to Milarepa, to Gampopa, and to the first Karmapa, and then through the Karmapas, we have a very direct link. So that's called the close, the proximate lineage of teachings. So when we say gurus, when the third Karmapa gives us this prayer to the gurus, it is to all of the gurus of those close and less close lineages of Mahamudra, as well as to all of the gurus of any authentic lineage. Okay, so now let's go back to the example that you could get enlightened drinking a glass of water. But normally you won't, because you need to be shown by somebody who is enlightened how to drink the water in a way that will help you. When we return to the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, he had attained enlightenment. He was 100% everything perfect that we want to achieve. But just by him being there, enlightened, and us being here in the presence of such a being, then we won't necessarily ourselves improve or change. So the Buddha taught. The historical Buddha gave teachings, gave methods, he taught. The Dharma, the teachings, is the way of communicating. So now, in this prayer, where we are connecting with our Mahamudra lineages, how do those gurus teach us? Well, certainly, when it comes to tap-lam, then it is through the Yidams. Yidam means, Yi means mind, Dam means bond, connection, bridge. So it's like a mind bridge, a mind connection, a heart connection, a mind bond that enables the gurus, with the realization they have, to set us up to practice in such a way that we can attain the same realization. We place our mind systematically, again and again and again, day after day after day, into the most perfect representation of what their mind is. And most importantly, you see, these lineages, They come down through time. And at the beginning, they started with a vision. So in the first place, somebody had a vision. For instance, the 15th Jawa Karmapa, he had the vision of Chinrezig that so many of us do in daily practice for Chinrezig. Or Tetan Minjo Dorje had the vision of Karmapakshi for the Karmapakshi practice. So that original inspiration comes directly from the Buddha, not the historical Buddha back in India, but from the Buddha mind, Sambhogakaya, which is there all the time, right now. And from that level into a very, very open and pure mind of a great master, one aspect of sacred truth, which has so many aspects, made itself very clear. And very often in an embodied form, like Manjushri holding the text and the sword represents wisdom, and Chinrezig with the 4 arms represents compassion. So some central form which gives us the means to connect with our Guru's mind if we meditate on it well enough. And then every detail of that is very precise. For instance, Chinrezig as a form represents compassion, but compassion isn't just one thing. Compassion depends on a stable mind, so Chinrezig's legs in meditation represent one thing. Compassion needs to be informed by the deepest wisdom, so Chinrezig's crown has the 5 jewels, the 5 Buddha wisdoms, and so on. We see one central force, and then all that needs to accompany it to make it perfect and complete. So this is the idea of a mandala, some central topic, central being, central force, accompanied by whatever is needed, whatever other beings, whatever other energies. So for instance, in the case of Karmapakshi, you have dakas, you have dakinis, you have protectors, you have gurus, you have yogis of various sorts, all of which were part of what Karmapakshi is, or whichever Yidam it is. So the Yidam becomes the main vehicle of connection between you and the Guru. And it's a natural practice involving visualizing and mantra recitation, inner energy work, and so on, and so on. So in the path of skillful means, and the 6 yogas, and the other Kaju practices, Yidam practices we do, we are refining our mind, attuning to mind's inner sacred timeless qualities through these particular methods. And then the same principle is there when we look at the drol-lam, the direct instructions on mind of Mahamudra, because there we deal with central principles and then we reinforce them with what needs to accompany them. So at various times we do foundation practices, at other times we do shamatha practice, and then we bring vipassana into the shamatha, and so on, through a very carefully guided series of focuses. Then we get there. So the Yidams and the deities of their mandala, the sacred forces, the sacred being, the sacred presences that go with them, are very much the method, very much like the Dharma teachings of the Buddha. So we are praying in this verse for the blessing of those lineages of skillful means and of liberation. And we're also praying to all of the Buddhas and their offspring of the 10 directions and the 3 times. So what does that mean? Well, 10 directions simply means everywhere, wherever there are Buddhas. If we go technical, it's the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 intermediary directions, the zenith and the nadir, but it just means simply everywhere. And the 3 times, time's a big topic. We have different versions of time in the Buddha Dharma, but this is the simple one: past, present, future. We are wanting to connect with. We are praying to all the Buddhas of the past that ever were in the infinite history of beings in every universe of the multiverse. And the same for the future, all of the ones that are yet to come, and with whom we can connect through time, beyond time, and all of those right now. We want to connect with them heart to heart, mind to mind, meditation to meditation, so that they bless our practice. And so the actual prayer is, please set in place all of the harmonious conditions for this practice of Mahamudra to succeed. This first verse is a general prayer for that to happen. So the idea is that through us connecting, we tap into one of the 10 great powers of wisdom of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And that power of wisdom is to rearrange our karma so that life becomes very resourceful, and what comes to us day after day becomes the very best and most efficient fuel for our practice. The presence of a strong enough Dharma in your life, the presence of a good enough and powerful enough Guru in your life will rearrange your karma and give you a most wonderful practice opportunity. So here we're praying to the Yidams and the deities of the mandala to do that. And it says the Buddhas and their offspring. I should explain that. It's quite simple. Technically it says the Buddha had body, speech, mind offering. Actually, the historical Buddha had a son. Sometimes Buddhas do have children, so they're their physical offspring. Then their speech offspring are mainly the Shravakas, the Arhats, the Pratyeka Buddhas, who preserved the historical Buddha's teaching as the Buddhist canon, and the mind offspring of the Buddha, or the heart offspring of the Buddha, are the ones who bathe in the same state of love, loving kindness, loving peace, loving wisdom, that is enlightenment, and who therefore care for all beings like they were a dearest friend, like an only child, like a mother cares for an only child. So they are the Bodhisattvas. So we're praying to all of those to make the right connections, and then that will rearrange our karma. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the goodies will come. Sometimes what we need in order to grow are challenges. Challenges which make us face our own history, our own inner psychology, our own way of preconceiving life, of projecting onto ourselves, onto other people, many, many things. But life will do that properly, efficiently, when all of the right connections come together. There is a Dharma harmony. That's a very big topic. It will doubtless be unpacked as we go through these videos. So thank you. That's this first introductory prayer which stands on its own. In the next talk, we'll come back to now the structured verses of the main body of the prayer. Meditate well. Meditate well. Please give it time. You'll never regret. Meditation will be your very, very best friend in this life. Thank you so much.